emotional for the African continent. In particular, the Ivory Coast, long looked to provide the spark of hope for the continent, were bundled out by a resilient Greece. Now, we've got Mark Haskins with us, as usual, to come and help us go through the action from last night. Mark, good morning.
Morning, Kendall.
Mark, it was a fairly emotional affair for a lot of us who were watching it, because we were all hoping that Ivory Coast would go through.
Yeah, no, it was, the World Cup just turned sour for a lot of us. I actually struggled to sleep a bit. I didn't think it would have that effect on me, but yeah, we were really looking to Greece, to Ivory Coast to come in and do a job for us, but unfortunately, they lost out to the Greeks.
Now, Mark, before we get into the meat of the rest of the discussion, I think it would be useful for us to jump into the results from last night and see what happened. And I'm going to be asking our director to see if he can stick it up for us so we can talk to it. But in the meantime, we know that the very first score was Italy 0-1 to Uruguay, Costa Rica 0-0 with England, and 1-4 Japan, Colombia thrashing Japan. And then after that, the Greeks, of course, scoring that last-minute penalty, last kick of the match to bundle Ivory Coast out with a 2-1 win.
You know, there were some good games, obviously. I think especially the Group C, the group with Ivory Coast, Colombia, that it proved to be some really good games last night. Obviously, the Group D, some of the games like the England-Costa Rica was a bit of a dead rubber, so it didn't live up to expectations. But the other games, really, it was some tense affairs.
Now, so what was your take on that? Now, let's talk about that first match. What was your take on that Greece-Ivory Coast match?
It was a difficult one, obviously. Ivory Coast came into the game, both Ivory Coast and Greece came into the game looking to make history because both of them stood a chance. The winner there basically was going to qualify for the round of 16 for the first time in their history. Greece, I think on two occasions, it was 94 and 2010, where they failed to qualify as well. Ivory Coast in 2006 and 2010 failed to qualify from their groups. So both these teams stood to make history. And ultimately, only one could go through. And unfortunately, Ivory Coast just weren't able to pull through. Again, I think on the part of Ivory Coast, just like in their game against Colombia, a silly mistake in the midfield cost them dearly because they lost the ball in the midfield and it gave Greece the opportunity to score their first goal, which was pretty much a travesty for Ivory Coast because they held their destiny in their own hand, but they literally let go of it because they needed just to draw this game at best, at worst, I should say. But now losing to Greece obviously go through, and the continent at large is devastated.
Mark, that seems to be a thing that's actually plagued the African teams at this particular World Cup, maybe even before, where the loss of concentration, and one wouldn't say necessarily key moments, because that particular moment when Diote lost the ball, and they just the bamboozled him, got the ball from him, went on to score. That wasn't necessarily a key moment in the match. So it was just losing focus at some points during the match. Is that not a challenge that African teams seem to be carrying with them?
It was just an elementary mistake, one that you don't see other teams making. Like when we've seen it, it's been, like you say, it seems to happen with the African teams, and it is a problem because it's cost them their place in the second round. But even more than that, I would say the tactical awareness is even more disconcerting on the part of the African teams. Because if you look at Ivory Coast last night, going into injury time, that's when they conceded the goal that actually knocked them out. It was a penalty. But if you look at the build-up to the penalty being conceded, Aurier, who's been really great for them at right back, was all the way up the field putting pressure on their centre-back when he didn't need to be doing that. At that point in the game, all they needed to do was secure the draw, and then they threw. Now their right back is all the way up the field. That shows a lack of tactical awareness because he didn't need to be there. He needed to be in his position to make sure he secures the draw. And then even, I think it's Sio, who gave away the penalty. When you see them tracking back, he's actually walking back. And one of the rules of football is you rest goal side. You always get goal side and you can rest there. If you're tired, you rest goal side. You don't rest, on the wrong side of a player. So he was actually caught on the wrong side of Samaras, and that's why he conceded the penalty. And that, again, is lack of tactical awareness. All he had to do was get behind the ball, and then he could have actually beaten Samaras to the ball if he was in the right position. But because he was caught wrong side of Samaras, that's why he conceded the penalty. And those are the small things that's
Mark,
costing
and we say
us.
Conceded penalty in hyphens, really, because, Samaras tripped over his own feet and dropped himself into the penalty box. That really was one of those suspect refereeing decisions.
I can't agree with you there. I think it's the emotion that would make us say that. But if we're really looking at it, if it happened on the other side of the field in the other box, what would we be saying then?
Penalty.
Exactly. So
but the truth of the matter is, it wasn't a penalty.
No, it was. It was. Samaras was in the process of taking a shot, and he put his leg in the way. If he had won the ball in doing that, then fine, it's not a penalty. But he was nowhere near the ball, and that's why it was a penalty. It saddens me to say that, but Ivory Coast had it in their hands and they threw it away. They only have themselves
Mark,
to blame.
that I agree with, and I suppose, as you know, we don't necessarily have to agree on everything. Now let's go to the Italy-Uruguay match. That particular match was very interesting. I'm sure you enjoyed it as well. Can you give us a bit more information on what you thought about that very feisty match?
Definitely. I was surprised because Italy actually came out and they played the game. They looked to get forward. They looked to create chances. They looked to win the game when they didn't need to. And knowing the Italians, they're known for their defensive play. They've always, over the years, they've always been solid, especially at the back. So they actually came out to play this game. And there were points in the game where they dominated. So I was a bit surprised by that, but it was a good game. Ultimately, we know the controversy that comes out of this game. But I think the fact that Uruguay were able to come through with Godin scoring the goal, we've seen him do it for his club at Atletico Madrid. Yeah, I think he was pivotal in them winning the La Liga. And he showed again, he stood up for his country. And, I mean, it was a great header, great goal. Obviously sparked, it came right after the Suarez incident. So this game is going to be talked about for a while still.
I think possibly even for the wrong reasons. Now, Luis Suarez, he chomps down on Chiellini's shoulder. And then after the match, he says, those things happen in the box. What is wrong with this man?
I don't know. I mean, Suarez... It's a difficult one to really get to the bottom of, because it seems when he gets frustrated, that's what he does. As he was running into the box, Chiellini kind of blocked his run, and it seems that's the only reaction he knows to do, because it's the third time he's done it now. And I think there are going to be some heavy sanctions against him. I do believe that Uruguay are going to lose him for the rest of the World Cup. And that's going to obviously be a big loss for them, because they'll be looking... he's a man, their go-to guy. He's carried them into the second round. I mean, his performance against England, and now yesterday he struggled a bit, but he's still, when he's on the field, the defense is always, they know they have their work cut out for them. So it's going to be difficult to see how Uruguay are going to get on without him.
Well, I mean, obviously, as you all know, that this particular thing was still sub judice. FIFA are still investigating. They will come up with their finding, but I think it's highly unlikely that they'll find him innocent.
If it was the first time it's happened, I think they might have looked at like given it a light eye. But the fact that it's the third time he's done it, I don't think they're going to let him get away with this one.
Now, the England-Costa Rica match was a dead rubber in the true sense, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was always, there was nothing to play for England except pride. And Costa Rica had already secured their passage. So Costa Rica coming into this one, just, they knew they just want to play a simple game and get through, because they don't also want to overexert their players, because they would want them fresh going into the last 16. So this game was never really going to, produce fireworks. On the part of England, when we win the World Cup, when we were doing the preview to their build-up to the World Cup, when they left out Jermaine Defoe, we said that might be a big loss. And I think it has proved to be, because up front, they haven't been as clinical as they could have been. And Jermaine Defoe might have made a big difference for England, I think, there.
Now let's go to the Colombia-Japan match. Colombia are the one team so far that's actually living up to its ranking, this FIFA ranking, and actually doing well.
Yeah, they came into Group C as the ranked team, and they've lived up to that billing. They've won all three of their games, and they've looked solid in doing it. They've looked consistent, and they played really well. They played some good football, and you can understand why they ranked among the top 10. And so they really proved themselves true to form.
They made a bit of history last night, didn't they?
Yeah, their goalkeeper came on at 43 years old. He actually breaks Roger Milla, the famous African Cameroonian, breaks his record as the oldest player to appear at the World Cup. And the other record he broke is that it's 2 days shy of 16 years shy of his previous appearance at the World Cup.
Mark, we're going to take some tweets in reaction to last night's action. I do believe there will be quite a few about Ivory Coast being bundled out by Greece, because everybody thought, including yourself, this is the one prediction that I can remember that you didn't quite get right. You didn't say it was going to be a walk in the park, but we all did expect
I
Ivory
don't.
Coast to
Yeah,
do well.
we definitely. This was their best chance of making it to the round of 16, and they've really let themselves down.
Yeah.
And I would say the continent as well.
Yeah, no, fully. Let's see if we get some tweets of what you have to say about last night in terms of reactions to the Ivory Coast match or any of the matches that happened last night. And when our director's ready with that, we'll take them now. Ivory Coast are on the way home, and we'll find out what Yaya really wants to do. No one is bigger than the club. And Manchester City Football Club, that's Andy Johnson saying that. That's because Yaya was saying Manchester City were keeping him from seeing his very sick brother before he died. Ace Eugenie says, so Ivory Coast couldn't qualify from group stages, and Drogba said Ghana always get the easy groups. Drogba, really? You had your chances yesterday. 2014 World Cup. Ivory Coast got robbed right in front of our eyes. But I think they robbed themselves here, don't you think?
They had it in their hands. They should have done the job.
Yeah, they should not have needed a referee
Definitely
with some decision later that we all argue about. IG Nedu, Yaya Toure has never done anything for Ivory Coast. He always has been mediocre for them and outstanding for his club side. That's interesting, club versus nation. What would you take?
I wouldn't agree with that. Yaya Toure is still their standout player. A lot of players coming to the World Cup, people will always say they like the same thing happens with Rooney, with Gerrard. They being, a lot of people say they don't perform for their country. But if you look at club level, they're playing with better players. When they come to play for their national teams, they expect the same kind of performance, but with their clubs, they're playing with better players around them, so they're allowed to shine more. With their countries, it's like too much is expected of them. So people expect them to carry the entire load, and football is a team sport. You can't do that.
No, I agree with you there. And like in our last 2 minutes, let's have a last look at the group standings to see how our groups are standing. Or we'll take a last one. Argentine, Botswana, Prince to mate 9. I think I might be the only Suarez fan who's not a Liverpool fan. Chief, you might be the only Suarez fan in this studio. Let's have a look-see at the group stands. In Group C, all three done. Mark, give a minute to take us through this, please.
Every time I look at this, it saddens me. Ivory Coast, we expected them to come through, but Colombia did really well, winning all three of their games. They got a +7 goal average, so they've shown that they can get amongst the goals. They have great attacking impetus, and they're good and solid at the back as well. Greece go through. I think everybody coming into the last round of games didn't expect this from Greece, but they put up the performance of their lives. They just wanted it more, it seemed, on the day, and ultimately that counted in their favor. Japan will go home disappointed to be bottom of the group. They looked really solid coming into the tournament, but unfortunately they just couldn't carry that form into the tournament. And obviously Ivory Coast, unfortunate, but they have to go home.
Yes, that's what it is. They've won one match at least and scored a few goals. Let's have a look at Group D and see what's happening there.
Well, obviously Costa Rica surprised all and sundry by finishing top of this group, ranked number 28. Everyone else in the top 10. You wouldn't have expected it, but that's what this World Cup has come to be, a World Cup of surprises. They've done really well. Uruguay have done themselves a huge favor. When it counted, they got the result. Again, I mean, they lost their opening game, but they lost the last. I mean, they won their last two, and that shows that they again going to be a team to watch going forward in the tournament. Italy will be bitterly disappointed after winning their opening game against England. They would have expected to at least get another win, or at best draw their last two games, and that would have carried them through. But now they go home for the second World Cup in succession that they go home in the group stages. England, obviously. A lot was expected, but
I think enough said about England.
Yeah.
Sir. Enough said about England. In fact, in some of the shots that we see from the stadium, they're already like, adios England, goodbye England, farewell. Somebody like writing down how much it cost them to actually come to the World Cup on England's as a fan of England, and how priceless it was that he's all wasted now.
England, obviously, their fans always expect so much of them. That's the home of football. They say that's where football is invented. So. A lot is expected of them, but I don't think they had the personnel to really compete at this World Cup.
Mark, thank you very much. Fantastic, as always. And we'll be speaking to you again in the next hour when we preview tonight's action.
Looking forward to it. Ken.
Phenomenal. That was Mark Haskins giving us the lowdown on last night.